Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Agostino Panico. I'm from Italy, and I work in the IT field since 2008. I'm mostly working as a red teamer, pen tester, exploit developer, and during the last 4 years, during my PhD, I work mostly on deception. So that's why I'm presenting this talk. That is the alpha release of my project. So I hope to get it done by the summer. And it's mostly related about the modern domain deception with the risk, limits, and the potentiality that we have. Here we go. Now, that's the agenda, almost, of the talk. So we are going to have a quick intro about cyber deception, common issues and risks, the attacker targeting mindset, the domain environment peculiarities, and then I build up a demo with a fake APT. So let's call it APT 6969, in which we do a threat modeling and the evaluation of deception. After the demo, we're going to reevaluate the issues, the risks, and the possibilities that we have. And then conclusion and Q&A session. Now, during the last couple of days, I was wondering how start the talk. You know, this is my first SANS webinar. So I was wondering how you can start the talk. So let's start it with a real life story. Now, a couple of years back, I was in US for a project, a 6-month project. During this time period, I hitchhiked across the country asking for money and actually trying to survive, only basing everything on my creativity. That was really fun, actually. And I remember one part of the travel in which I was in a crossroad. In this crossroad, I was asking for money because I was completely broke. So I made a sign with something like something written on it, like, please help me. I'm really hungry. I don't know how to get something to eat, but nothing. 2 hours at the crossroad, I made $10 probably. So after 2 hours, I decided to change it. So I changed the sign with something like this: too ugly to prostitute, please help me. In 45 minutes, I raised up $120 plus $25 Walmart gift card. So this is the real power of deception. And instead of cite Sun Tzu with the art of war, I'm from Italy, so I'm going to cite Niccolo Machiavelli, the author of The Prince. So what's deception for Machiavelli? Men are so simple of mind and so much dominated by their immediate needs that a deceitful man will always fight plenty who are ready to be deceived. Always. So the only thing that we need to understand is the immediate needs of the guy that is in front of us. But when we talk about cyber, what's cyber deception? Now, the goal of cyber deception is to effectively detect the attack. if something is going on and try to confuse or misdirect the attacker. And also, using the deception, we try to understand if some of our assets are already being compromised. Those are some of the key points that we can gain with deception. So, what's the focus point that we have? Using cyber deception, we try to manipulate the one thing that the attacker thinks that it's real. So the network that is attacking. Now, those key points are not actually the reality, but this is what the industry, common, try to sell us as deception. So if you look at the presentation from the vendors, they say, with deception, we manipulate what the attacker counts on, means the reality of the network is land. We provide with deception instant gratification. We go beyond common security implementation. And on the other hand, we simplify the implementation and the maintenance. That's something that is actually interesting to say. The point is, we have a lot of issues with these key points. Manipulating the one thing that the cyber attackers count on, because they expect that the network is real, it's actually a big misunderstanding, a big misconception that we have in the deception industries. Because when you try to understand cyber attacker, you don't need to treat them as script kiddies. You need to treat them as trained operators that are doing offensive cyber operation. So they don't rely only on the information that they gather from the attack, but from an entire ecosystem. And they expect that you have deception in place because they've done their homework about the target. So this focus point, it's not complete. And in this formula, it's only related to script kiddies, maybe, and some activist groups. Let's go to the second focus point, providing instant gratification. So let's focus on the term gratification. Looking at the definition, we see that the definition of gratification is the satisfaction or the pleasure you feel when you get something you wanted or work for. The point is, to correctly evaluate the gratification, we need to know the target of a specific cyber operation. The point is, in 90% of the case, we don't know the attack target, the real target. Third focus point, and going beyond common security implementation. Now, this is actually something that is really easy to say, but it's really difficult to implement. How many people, how many organizations actually implement correctly the common security mechanism? How many organizations implement correctly defense in depth, firewalls, network IDS, network IPS, host IPS, host IDS, and so on? Not so many. In reality, we can find a lot of fails in the security industry, like this one, like this one, this one, this one, and like this one. Before going to deception, we need to understand what we have, what is our security posture. And then let's go to the fourth deception focus point. Simplification. We need to simplify the implementation and the maintenance. To simplify, we need to actually evaluate correctly what's the cost of the simplification and what's the risk associated with the simplification of the implementation. What's commonly deception companies sell is a kind of general purpose approach. Their approach is good for all the attacks, for the majority of the attacks. But in reality, we have too many variables, way too many. On the other hand, many deception tools are open source. And sometimes those tools are only rebuilt from a specific company and sell as a brand new. The point is, the open source in this way stay really poorly maintained. Current environments, on the other hand, are based on trust. Like, let's talk about Active Directory. And Active Directory is based on trust. So how we can simplify something that is built on a complex infrastructure like Microsoft Active Directory with some key principles like the trust? And that's something really difficult to manage. Looking at the attacker mindset, we need to introduce as a key point for the attacker the OODA loop. I know that many of you are familiar with the OODA loop, and I don't want to spend too much time on it. Now, the OODA loop is a decision-making process. It can be useful for individuals or for organization. And it's based on four steps: observe, orient, decide, and then act. This loop is particularly useful in a scenario in which we need to react really in a really fast way, and in which our opponent is we can take advantages of the opponents if we act really fast. But if we talk about the attacker, the OODA loop is only the ground truth, the baseline that we have. The other step that we need to understand to evaluate the attacker is the MITRE attack framework. MITRE attack framework, attacks stands for attacker, tactics, techniques, and common knowledge. Now, this is a big database, a big common knowledge of TTPs from the community that can help out build a threat model. So using the attack framework, we can model a specific threat. And we can understand in which phase the threat stays on, and what's the next move of the attacker if we identify it correctly. The third point that we need to understand when we evaluate the attacker is, oh, sorry. Okay. The third step that we are going to evaluate for the attack, when we talk about the attacker, is the targeting cycle. Now, the targeting cycle is a military cycle mostly, and you can see in the various phases that we have that it talks about commander. Now, the targeting cycle is really useful because it helps us understand what's the real goal. So if we are able to understand what has been the targeting cycle for the attacker, we can actually operate and implement the deception correctly. Now, let's focus a little bit on the targeting cycle. The targeting cycle is based on 6 stages, and we have the end state and commander objective, means the real goal of the operation. It's not the target, but it's the main target. So what's the real goal? After defining the real goal of the operation, we can split the real goal in different, in small parts. So we develop targets and we give them a priority. After this stage, we analyze the capability that we have as attackers. And if we need some extra capability to reach the goal, to reach the goal that we follow.
Hey, Agostino, this is Carol. Your audio sounds a little bit more muffled than it was a moment ago.
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, there we go. That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So after the capability analysis, we have the commander decision and force assignment. Means that we analyze the commander decide which kind, if the target prioritization and the development and the capability that we are implementing are correctly and are on the same page of the main operational goal. After that, we have the mission planning and the force execution, and means that we are going from the operational level to the tactical level. After that, we have the assessment. Now, as I said before, this is main military cycle. So let's try to merge this with some specific cyber capabilities. In particular, if we put together the OODA loop style, means the way in which we react in a really fast way, the targeting cycle from an operational perspective, and then the attack framework, actually we have a pretty good picture of the entire the entire targeting cycle made by the attacker. So we can understand all the information that the attacker get, and from where we can find the real attacker goal. Based on this conception, that is the attacker targeting mindset, we try to analyze offensive operation to build up a robust deception system. A robust deception system should care of driving the attacker on a deceived target. according to the real target from a theoretical perspective. Cannot be general purpose, but should be threat aware. So if we want to design a deception system, we need to be aware of the threat that we are facing. Should be completely integrated into the production environment. It should rely on the production environment, but should represent a preferential path to reach the target, to reach the target by the threat. But it's not the real target, it's the fake one. And the deception system should be constantly maintained and updated to match the threat, TTPs, and targets. Now, all those considerations comes from the evaluation of the attacker. So if you want to have a robust and solid deception system, we need to work on the threat modeling, and we need to work on the security or the maturity, cyber maturity of our enterprise. Now, as we said before, nowadays a lot of enterprise are based on Microsoft Active Directory. Now, what are the basic features of Active Directories? We have authentication, because Active Directory provides authentication, authorization, accounting, trust, resource sharing. Those are almost the key features that we have. Now, why Active Directory is so important? From where we can understand that Active Directory environment are really so popular. Now, if you look at all the red team TTPs and tools that are used by attacker and also by red teamers, most of them are focused on Active Directory. If you check out Jorge Kiles C2 matrix, you can find a really good insight about the actual C2 ecosystem and all the tools that rely on those C2 like Covenant, Empire, and so on. Now, if we look at the military attack framework, we have only specific techniques, specific tactics that are focused on Active Directory environment. Not all of them, but the majority of them. So we can achieve persistence, we can achieve defense evasion, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, and collection, mostly, using Active Directory environments. Now, what's the point of that? Now, let's have a quick demo. Yeah. Using the niche attack framework navigator, we have all the TTPs available there. Sorry?
I was just confirming that it looks good.
Okay. Now let's select all the features. Now what we have to do now is try to model the threat that we are facing. This is the first crucial point that we have. Now, for the sake of simplicity, let's select APT29 and Turla. Okay. Now we have an APT that is a mix of APT29 and Turla. Why APT29 and Turla? Because both of them almost cover all the phases. So it's a good overview. Now, let's start from the beginning. Initial access. Now, spearphishing attachment and spearphishing links are not really related to domain environment. If we want, they cannot be deceived, really. So let's skip those. Execution. Okay, execution. We have a bunch of options, but for the purpose of the test, now let's try to select command line interface and PowerShell. Why we select those two? As we said before, we try to drive the attacker over a specific target. So we need to limit the option that he has. So we need to make sure that the attacker actually can use PowerShell and can use command line interface. The point is, if the attacker can use PowerShell and command line interface, we need to be able to monitor and to understand what is happening using those execution providers. For instance, let's make an example about PowerShell. Now we can use PowerShell with GIA. Just enough administration from, it's a built-in Microsoft feature that can provide limited access. Using GIA, we can give the attacker limited opportunity to perform persistence and privilege escalation. So we want to be breached, but we want to be breached in a way that we can control and we can monitor. So we start with PowerShell, and then we say, oh, we can use PowerShell profiles. So let's color it. Oh, sorry. PowerShell profiles, and also scheduler task. Those are two ways in which we can, the attacker can achieve persistence and privilege escalation. So if we limit the profile to perform those kind of tasks, we are narrowing down the attack path. So let's skip defense evasion. At this point, the attacker is trying to access credential. In which way? He can access credentials in files, for instance. So what we need to do? We need to create a specific file with credential accessible only after the privilege escalation from PowerShell. So we are narrowing down the attack path. After that, the attacker is trying to do discovery. So which kind of discovery? For instance, file and directory discovery and remote system discovery. So it means that from the endpoint that is being breached, with a specific profile, we can see specific resources. Using, if you wish, the credential that the attacker found in the file. So you're not giving the attacker a way to match. So it's not a classical honeypot, it's an adaptive honeypot. And then lateral movement. Lateral movement can be done with the credential that you have there. So we can have overpass the ticket, for instance. And at this point, the attacker starts to collect data. Depending on the attacker typology, the collection phase, it's something we need to really be aware of. Because the collection phase defines what the attacker is looking for. Which kind of information is he interested in? So, for instance, APT, the threat model that we are using, they are not doing email collection, but let's, for the sake of simplicity, say that they look for email. What they are looking for the email? Or input capture. So why they are looking for input capture? And then we have command and control and exfiltration that are not really related to domain environment. Now, as you can see here, we have almost defined a path for the attacker. So how we can implement this kind of path inside the Active Directory environment? Now, this is, as you can see, this is the example that already done for APT 6969. Now, APT 6969 is a really complex and advanced APT. This is the legend, and after the presentation, I'm going to share the JSON file for the military attack navigator on GitHub. In this way, you can also look at it in detail. Now, in particular, you can see in the legend that we have in green the APT 6969 techniques. Now, all of them are green, basically. After that, we have in red the domain environment specific. In yellow, the attack deception path. And in rosy, the possible information target. Now, as you can see here, it becomes really complex. If you face a really complex attacker, this model is really complex, and it's really difficult to build up a deception system that can handle correctly the entire path. Now, for the sake of the demo, I just want to share with you a small insight. Okay, clear database. Now, I already done the information acquisition. Here we go. Now this is a real simple environment. Wait. Here we go. Okay. Can you see it? I hope so. Okay. So this is a real simple environment. And I've done two different data acquisition before the deception capabilities and after the deception capabilities. Now, we have a simple domain and we have only one administrator. So we don't have any direct path to this sync. And the only user account that can be targeted is the administrator account. The only system with unconstrained delegation is the DC. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. We have only one user with associated SPM. So here we go. We don't have computers that have unconstrained delegation that are on DC. Here we go. Okay, so this is a pretty basic configure domain environment that can be attacked, but it's not straightforward. Now let's clear the DB. Oh, sorry. Okay. Upload data. Okay. Now, we have at this point 3 domain administrator, but 2 of them are deception. Means that they are there, but they have some specific ECL set that actually you can't use the account. We have some extra account that can perform DC sync, and also those accounts are actually really well monitored, and you can log on to this account only from a non-existent computer, for instance. We have a bunch of extra users with SPM associated that can deceive the attacker because it's trying to Kerberos those kind of users. We have different computers with unconstrained delegation. The point is the Win103 and revert web are non-existent computer. Means that the attacker can actually be deceived by those. Other than that, let's find out another. Here we go. Admin. Where is it? Oh. Okay. Let's check all the groups with the word admin. Now let's see, forest admin. Forest admin is not the default Windows group. Forest admin, you have one member, slave user, and forest admin, oh yes, forest admin is member of DNS admins. So we have slave users, but slave users is actually, you have another user that is a common user. There is a generic all access to the slave users properties. So means that this can be actually an attack path depending on the attacker capability. All those capabilities are actually deception properties that can deceive the attacker during the attack path. So we need to be able to correctly monitor all those capabilities, all those interactions, and at that point we can understand if the attacker is actually moving in our network, from where he's coming from, where he's trying to reach. Let's so as we saw in the demo a little bit, I know that it's not an exhaustive demo, and I'm going to share on GitHub as much as I can about it. We have a lot of opportunity to implement a robust and useful deception system. We have to do that, we can use actually Microsoft feature like GIA. We can use the PAM, SPN, delegation, HEL, DACL, AD object properties, and so on. So we need to design the attack path in a way that is complex enough to meet the attacker capability. This is the key point that we need to follow. On the other hand, we need to understand the attacker targeting process, because if we reverse engineer correctly the targeting process of the attacker, we can really improve the threat hunting capability, and at that point we can reduce the risks. So after we say so far, the entire process is based on the threat model. So we need to do it in a right way. The deception capabilities can be effective, but should be designed for a specific threat. Don't follow the general purpose approach unless your target is, the targets are script kiddies and some really bad activist group. If you can define the threat, means that your enterprise, your infrastructure is not mature enough to implement some cyber deception. And another important thing that we need to underline is that deception relies on common security mechanism. It relies on it. It's not something beyond. it relies on it. Because if we can't monitor correctly the environment, there is no point having deception capability. Deception in this kind of implementation, if we want to implement it in a domain environment, for instance, is an extension of the attack surface. And while a bad configuration about the network intrusion detection system results in false positive, false negative, a bad deception configuration is something that can be really, really dangerous for your infrastructure. So just to conclude the webinar, deception is a key feature that you have in your arsenal as threat hunting team, but you need a lot of effort if you want to really customize and set up a threat-oriented deception capability. The enterprise maturity should be evaluated, because when you deploy deception, you extend the attack surface. You need to integrate the deception in your current cyber defense infrastructure, and you need to understand, and this is crucial, who is the threat that you're facing. Now, as I say in the beginning, I'm working on a complete matrix based on the attack, in which for each technique that you have in the attack matrix, you have the evaluation of the deception mechanism that you can use. I hope to have it done by summer, and this period of lockdown is helping me out with that. So I hope that you enjoy the talk, and if you have any question, I will be happy to answer.
All right, well, if anyone has any questions for Agostino, go ahead and put it in the questions feature at the bottom of the Zoom window. I'm not seeing any at the moment, Agostino, but
Yep.
give people a chance to think. I do want to point out that in that chat window, I've put the link to the evaluation for tonight's webcast. All right, well, I think that's all. I think you can go ahead and wrap up.
Okay. So guys, thank you all for the attention. I hope you enjoyed the talk.